Hi, my name is LeAnne, and I'm here with Ashley, and I will be interviewing her about her childhood and maybe some other random things.
That's fine. It's totally fine.
All right, so when and where were you born?
It's a funny story, actually, but I was born in Edina, Minnesota, but I've always lived in Shakopee, so when people hear that I was born in Edina, they're like, oh, you moved out. And I was like, I never moved. It's just that's where my mom's doctor had privileges to practice.
Oh,
so, yeah, and that's where my brother was born, too. So she's like, I had the same doctor, and, you know, I wasn't going to switch doctors.
Okay, so how far of a drive was that?
So that's about like a 45 minutes, and it was actually during the season where in Shakopee at the time my mom had to cross the river, and that was when the river was the highest.
Oh,
so
okay.
some of the roads may have been blocked off at the time, but either way, my mom she always says, she's like, I was worried because that's when it was like flood season was kind of in, and your dad wasn't home, and you know I had to drive myself, and I was like
pregnant, the hormones are everywhere anyway.
Yeah, my neighbor, the Keons, they had moved in at the time, so they were watching my brother, and then my aunt came and picked him up and brought him to the hospital. But it's like when I tell people I was born in Edina, but I lived in Shakopee, they're like, oh, you moved out. I was like, no, it's just my mom didn't really want to switch doctors at the point.
Yeah. So what was she like induced? Like they had like on the date, or did she not know and had to like rush to the hospital?
No, she had to get in the car, and she's like, I gotta go. Bye. watch my son for me. Which is funny because they said that I was supposed to be born on September 1st, and so I was late. Which kind of sucks because then I could have been in a grade above me because I was at that awkward time in September where I could have been the youngest in 2011 grade, or I could have been the oldest in 2012 graduation. So I was the oldest. And so when people hear that, they're like, were you held back? I was like, no, I was born in September. And it also sucks because out of all my entire friends, I was the oldest, and I still am for a majority of my friends. So.
Turned 21st.
Yeah, my 21st. None of my friends could go because they were all underage, and I only had one good friend that would willingly go out with me at that time. And I was like, you can bring your roommate too. Like it just doesn't have to be us two. Like it can be three. And so she took me out. And funny story, on my 21st, I got kicked out of the bar.
Oh no! What did you do?
I didn't even do anything. I wasn't even that bad. Like I had been, I don't know why, but I was doing that stupid drunken walk where you cross your legs.
Yeah.
And then I was calling a friend, and then the bouncer guy, he's like, you have to leave. And I was like, well, can I at least tell my friends that I'm kicked out? And so I told them, I was like, guys, I have to leave. I got kicked out. And they're like, what? And it was a Monday night.
Oh, my goodness.
And my friends came out, and they're like, Ashley, we've seen people legitimately brawl in a bar, and they weren't kicked out. That guy was just being a doofus. Yeah. So I was like, oh, okay.
Well, still a memorable 21st.
It's very memorable. And my mom tells that to my cousins, and they are like, Ashley, you by far have the best one, I guess. So they're still amazed because, like, out of my entire family on my mom's side, my brother and I were probably the goody two-shoes. Like, we've never had any issues that have come up. Like, we've never had any drinking or anything else. So they're always surprised when some of these stories come up. They're like, what?
So, what was it like growing up? Like, what was your hometown like?
Well, my hometown is Shakopee, Minnesota, and I grew up in a neighborhood where we still had the original owners of the houses still there, but then we had new families in. So it was kind of a mixture of both. Like, yes, we had kids, and yes, we had older adults. So, and it was also funny because where my house is, it is next to what is the junior high, but when I was growing up, it was always the high school. So it was literally 3 houses, a street, and then the high school.
Oh, nice.
So it was nice during homecoming because then we didn't really have to find a parking space for our car. We could just walk across the street. But I know my parents had difficulties with that because high school students, they're not always
the quietest.
Well, not that they're the quietest, but my dad was like, it was a little nerve-wracking for us when you would want to go out and play in the front yard or like bike.
Oh, yeah.
Because we were so close. So, and then my dad actually said, he's like, during Halloween, before I would leave the house, because he'd be the first one to leave in the morning, he's like, I would have to take the pumpkins and bring them inside because in the past, some high schoolers would come down our neighborhood and, you know, like take the pumpkins and like smash them.
Oh, that's so mean.
Yeah. So, and then it never occurred to me until until I asked my dad. He's like, yeah, we had some issues. But I mean, I always thought it'd be the best because I knew when I would go to high school, I didn't have to have a car.
Yeah, you could just walk.
I could just walk. So I was like, I get the best of both worlds. So it's like I didn't have to drive the bus and I didn't have to find a car. I could just walk. And then we built a new high school in our town because our town was growing. And I was like,
dang it.
But I got to walk because I was the new junior high. So it's like, that was nice too. And it also helped, like, if I had an assignment that I was left at home, all I'd have to do is go to the office and say, like, oh, my teacher allowed me to go to my house, but I have to call my parents so that you get permission. And so I call up my mom or dad and be like, I forgot my assignment at home. Can you talk to this person and allow me to cross the street and get the stuff? Yeah, so it's like, yeah. Some people are like, I left my assignment at home. You get a 0. I left my assignment home. I'll be back in 5.
Nice. Oh, so what were your parents like?
My parents, I don't know. Like, I never really thought about it until when I got older and that kind of stuff. But I guess my parents, when I was younger, I didn't like that my brother and I had to go to daycare in the morning, daycare in the afternoon, and daycare during the summer. You know, I grew up next to a family that their mom did the daycare, so they got to be home in the summer. They didn't have to go anything in the afternoon, and I was like, I wanted to be home with my parents. I didn't really want to have the after-school programs, which I liked because that's where I got to see some other friends. So it wasn't until I got older that it's like my parents had to work. And so, but growing up, they were, I don't know, it's kind of hard to think about that now.
Were you close with them?
Yeah, my brother and I are extremely close with my parents because my dad's side of the family has spread out. When we were growing up, we really didn't know where they were. Whereas my mom's side of the family, they were in different towns. And we spent, like, weekends, you know, and that kind of stuff. But it's like, I also grew up around a lot of kids that went to a Catholic school. So it's like, we couldn't really talk about school that much. Because they would talk about their friends at school, and I had no idea who they were. And when I would talk about my friends, they had no idea who I was. So it's like, my brother and I, we were really close to our parents. We were kind of close to each other. Because that's all we had kind of growing up in a sense. So, I mean, there were days when my mom would be working on the weekends and my dad would take us and do stuff. So, I mean, like, my parents were very present when they could be, you know, and not work and that kind of stuff. So, I guess we were really lucky about that because a majority of our childhood is either spending time with each other or our parents or with my mom's side of the family. And it's funny because I was telling my mom about when my brother and I were sick, we would go to my grandma's house because she was just 45 minutes away, so my mom could drop us off there. And she's like, you had good memories in Grandma's house. I was like, well, that was our second house. I was like, if we weren't home, we were at Grandma's because she'd be watching us. We would be sick or we'd be spending the day with her. Or if not that, we would be at my Aunt Beth's house. And she would watch us because she was the closest. So I guess growing up with my parents, we were very close-knit.
And are you still close today with your brother and your parents?
Not so much with my brother because as my brother and I grew up, he's 3 years older than me. So it's like when I was still in the stage of like, let's watch cartoons and let's kind of be funny. My brother was like, no, I'm going to watch the news.
Yeah.
And I was like, what the? So like he and I, like our different stages never matched up until somewhat now, kind of in a sense, where because I'm away at home, when I do come, we're a little bit more nicer to each other. So, I mean, the distance does help. But I'm still very close with my mom. I'm still very close with my dad. I call my parents at least once a week, every other, email them pretty often. So.
Good. That's awesome. So, did you get into a lot of trouble when you were a kid? Or high school?
Not high school. I never got into trouble in high school because I had heard and seen like on TV the kind of stuff that people would do in high school, and it's like I had heard a couple of stuff with my cousin, and it's just like no, I'm not gonna do that. But I mean, when I was a kid, I was a weird child. Weird child. I'll be the first to admit. So I guess when I was a kid, I got a little bit into more trouble. But in high school, not so much. Even at one point, because my brother and I, we had friends, but it's not like my friends had parties on the weekends or stuff, and there was like something on the news or TV show, and I was like, aren't you happy? Like, we never did that stuff, and my dad's like, well, I wish you guys would go out a little bit more on Saturday. So it's like my dad was pushing me out the door. And I was like, I'm sorry, my friend group doesn't do that stuff. So.
That's nice. Do you have any, like, stories of, like, one of the biggest times you got into trouble?
What's the biggest time I got into trouble? Let me see. as a kid, I was caught cheating on a spelling test, and I lied about it, and they're like, you have to go back to your room, like my classroom, and I didn't. I was just walking around the school, and then the teacher found me, and they're like, we have to call your parents, and I was like, no, don't call my parents. And then they're like, no, we have to call your parents because you're cheating, you were walking around, and it was right when my aunt had just given birth, so I was like around 10, and I was like, you can't call my parents, else they won't let me see my baby cousin, like,
oh my God.
I was just crying, and then my dad got the stuff, and it was just not fun. I never, like, I tried to be the goody two-shoes, but then I'd get into trouble, and it was just like, I thought the world was going to end, and never did, so I guess that was the most memorable one ever.
Nice. So, what was one of your best memories from your childhood?
I guess my best memory growing up would be going up to Brainerd in Alexandria for family vacations. Because it was just us, and we would put in the Harry Potter cassette tapes, and we'd just listen, and that kind of stuff. I mean, we even still go up to Brainerd. No, not Brainerd. It's right next to like Brainerd and Baxter, Minnesota. Cannot remember the name right now, but it's a really famous touristy place. Okay. So I really like that, and so we still go up there from time to time.
Nice. That's very cool.
So those are probably my best memories.
Very cool. So, do you have any nicknames?
Yeah, I actually do, but they're only most of the nicknames come from my mom and my dad. Like my dad calls me Chief because I don't know why, he just never referred to me as Princess. I don't know why, but he refers to me as Chief, and I'm assuming that has something to do with my hometown because Shakopee is technically a Native American name. It's a chief's name of a Native American tribe in the Tawakanagan, so I think that's why he calls me, and he also calls me Boss Lady. So, and then my mom calls me Ash from time to time. She's the only one I allow because growing up in the 90s, Pokemon came out, and the main character of Pokemon was Ash, and so I never wanted to be referred to that. And then my mom also calls me Tootsie Bell, and she's the only one that has ever called me that.
Oh, cute.
My aunts call me Miss Ashley. I don't know why. They just do. They put the Miss Ashley. Like, I'm Miss Ashley. My other cousin is Miss Sophia.
Yeah, I did that with my nieces. I have a Miss Morgan.
Yeah, so that kind of stuff. And then what else?
What's your favorite of those names?
I do have to admit, when my dad called my cousin Chief one time, I got super pissed. I was like, that's my nickname. You do not give that to somebody else.
Yeah.
And so that kind of stuff. I guess Chief would be my favorite, and then Tootsie Bell is another one that's really close to my heart.
That's cute. I like that one. So, in closing here, what would you like to be remembered by?
I don't know. I guess, I don't know what I want to be remembered by. I just want to be remembered. Okay. Because I know a lot of people are like, oh, I want to be remembered for doing this in my life. I was like, I just want people to remember me. I don't want, like, after I'm dead and then, like, 20 years later, nobody knows who I was. They just see a headstone and they're like, oh, that's her.
Who that was.
Yeah, so I guess just being remembered. That's all.
How does that, like, being remembered, how does that look to you?
I guess just, I don't know what it looks like. I mean, maybe it could be in a book form, or my family still talks about me, still, you know, has memories of me, because my mom does that with her side of the family. So I guess that's in a form of still being remembered. I guess still being talked about in a form.
Well, awesome. Well, thank you so much.
Welcome.